bilateral summit that's taking place in Moscow between India and Russia. We have with us our esteemed guest, Dr. Peter Topachkunov. Peter, in fact, coming back to you, let's shift our discussion and the focus to Ukraine, the conflict in Ukraine. In fact, taking the center stage in the summit, I wouldn't think that it would be wrong to put it that way, given that there are two major particular aspects here. One being the fact that India abstained from voting against Russia in the United Nations with regards to this particular conflict. They'd even not supported the sanctions that were levied by the West on Russia. Second, this summit comes in at the eve of the NATO summit that's to take place in Washington from today itself. And the Deputy Secretary of State of the United States of America, Kurt Campbell, in fact, had urged that the Prime Minister bring up the Ukrainian conflict and also try and reason with the Russian President with regards to respecting Ukraine's territorial integrity and territorial sovereignty. How do you think that discussion is to go, given that, in fact, as of today, as we speak, there's already been another missile strike in Ukraine which has claimed the life of plenty? How are we looking at this?
I don't think that Prime Minister Modi could change the position of Vladimir Putin. First of all, I just want to mention that, of course, this meeting is happening before a long pause in their interactions. But at the same time, they had multiple phone calls after the start of this military confrontation. That is why both leaders know each other's positions and they know each other's views on this conflict and the feeling and wishes about how this conflict should be ended. So that is why I believe that they would have a continuation of this conversation. But in the same time, Vladimir Putin, I guess, would remain on the same position as he had before. You mentioned that at the same time, the NATO summit in Washington is happening right now, and there is another position by State Secretary Blinken. It's right, but at the same time, my belief is that this meeting between Vladimir Putin and Narendra Modi was planned in advance, and it's not a very connected event to the summit in Washington or to the previous peace summit in Europe, when, by the way, a representative of India participated. Yes, the question is, and thank you for that, what is the balance in the conversation between Vladimir Putin and Narendra Modi? How much time they spend on Ukraine and Ukraine conflict related issues, and how much time they spend on the bilateral agenda or the global agenda as well? And during his speech this morning, Prime Minister Narendra Modi mentioned the position of India in the global affairs, and we have this agenda as well, such as BRICS, such as Shanghai Cooperation Organization, multilateral platforms. So that is why this is the question for me. Of course, there are the issues that they need to discuss concerning Ukraine, such as the Indian citizens being part of this conflict. But at the same time, I believe that most of their conversations would be about economic relations between Russia and India, about money, about oil, about military technical cooperation, and about global affairs, and the issues such as also sanctions, such as the UN, and how to
Right,
interact.
Peter, I'm
with
sorry,
the-
I'm just interrupting you here to just clarify the point that you're making here. Are you saying, as Prime Minister Narendra Modi himself, in fact, in his address as well, has mentioned that dialogue and diplomacy is the best way to go forward with regards to the conflict that's underway in Ukraine? Do you think that President Putin shall take this into consideration, given that this is a particular point India has been harping on, while it's maintained a distance from voting against Russia in the United Nations, but they have also kept harping on the point of dialogue and diplomacy ever since the beginning of this conflict. Do you think that is not going to be taken by the Russian president, not going to be taken into consideration by the Russian president?
I believe in this position, and I fully support your Prime Minister views on that. However, just most recently, we had a state visit by leader Orban from Hungary, and he mentioned after visited also Kiev and Moscow that the positions are very far from each other. So we need to give a chance for the dialogue, for the peace process, but we need to bring these two positions by Kiev and Moscow closer to each other. So that is why, yes, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is totally right. And we need to give the chance, but we need to bring the positions of two countries much closer to stop the violence, to stop the armed confrontation, and to start the conversation between Kiev and Moscow. And I hope India helps us.